musical.
All right, you are going to be at Harriet's. You all going to be at Harriet's Saturday morning with Stephanie Miller.
I'm going to
Okay.
be at Harriet Saturday morning with Stephanie Miller and
Okay.
whoever else she's schlepping with her. Yep.
You funny.
Okay, and all of us moved. So we all love you. So if you showed up, you'd be celebrity, dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you. I love you too.
Okay,
Thank you.
love you,
Thank you
bless
so
you.
much.
Have a blessed day.
All right, you too. Thank you. 866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748. Going to move on to our next guest. It is Women's Wednesday, of course. Trump said, he campaigned on ending the TPP, but we want to talk about another TPP today, and it's very important, especially when Republicans always want to emphasize issues like abortion. There was actually a pro-life Democrat that won in the primary in Illinois last night himself. We'll talk Lipinski. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. I failed to mention that earlier. Just to update you too, the Austin serial bomber blew himself up in a vehicle early this morning. Waiting on more details for that. We know that he was a 24-year-old white male. We're now learning also that the Sacramento police killed an unarmed black father on Sunday night, waiting for that video to be released this week. Trump is tweeting. We'll get to that too. But first though, joining us from Democracy Forward, which has filed suit against the Trump administration, is Charisma Troiano. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Oh, yeah, you've got it, Mark.
Oh, wonderful. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Snow day here in D.C., but other than that, not doing too bad.
Yeah, we're getting all that up here in New York too. So spring is not here. Can you all sue the weather for spring? I don't know if you can do that or not. But tell us, if you would, Charisma, about this other TPP that the Trump administration has been trying to end.
Yeah, so this is the Teen Pregnancy Prevention program, and the Trump administration last summer abruptly announced that they would immediately terminate the grants that were awarded to about 81 TPP grantees across the country. This was done without any explanation, with no justification, and also surprisingly, at a time when we're seeing, record lows nationwide in the teen pregnancy rate right now, Power to Decide has put together a couple of stats showing that, there's been a decrease of 67% in the teen pregnancy rates nationwide between 1991, when we were seeing high spikes, and 2016. And, we're seeing decreases in all 50 states and across, all racial and ethnic groups. So it was a little shocking, to say the least, that the Trump administration had made this abrupt and seemingly unjustified decision to cut teen pregnancy prevention programs that have been effective and helpful in driving down that teen pregnancy rate across the country.
And you all also found a trove of emails, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we did. So when this decision happened, a lot of grantees were perplexed, and so were we. Even though we weren't a grantee, we look at improper and possible illegal actions taken by the administration, by the executive branch. So we filed a FOIA, or Freedom of Information request, to find out more information of what led to, what was a part of this decision-making process to cut these teen pregnancy prevention program grants. And these cuts happened mid-cycle. These grants were 5-year grants, and in the middle of that period is when this administration decided that, nope, we're not going to use these evidence-based programs anymore. And so, we had to file suit. The administration refused to give over any information just on their own without the threat of an actual filing of a lawsuit. And when we did so, we got back quite, like you said, a trove of information which showed, or which rather suggests, that political appointees within the Trump administration's Health and Human Services, the department or the agency that ultimately made the decision to terminate these grants, it was political appointees, these documents suggest, that drove that decision. And what was really kind of shocking for us was that the political appointees here are abstinence only, as well as anti-abortion and anti-contraceptive ideologies are those that are held by these appointees in particular.
And this, you all argue, violates the Administrative Procedure Act, correct?
That's correct. So the Administrative Procedure Act requires that, agency action be done in a way that's not arbitrary, in a way that's not capricious. In other words, you need to have a reasoned explanation for when you do an action. It appears that the administration in this case did not have one. And just to kind of take a little bit back to show what these documents seem to suggest, so you had political appointees, including Valerie Huber, who ran, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on her. So she ran back in 2005 an abstinence education program in Ohio. This was a state program. There was a recent study by Case Western that basically panned that education program, particularly the abstinence-only portion that she ran, as misrepresenting religious convictions as scientific fact, as containing false information about contraceptives, among other critical problems. And now we see Ms. Huber in a position, drafting and editing the termination letters that went out to over 80 grantees across the country, again seemingly seeming to push an abstinence-only education program without basing it in some sort of justification. And the teen pregnancy prevention program is one that focuses on evidence, not ideology. And it honestly doesn't discriminate against methods. There were a number of grantees who had within their programs abstinence education. The teen pregnancy prevention program is about, prove to us that this is a performance-based way or means of reducing teen pregnancy, and we'll evaluate it as such. So it shouldn't be driven by a political point of view or by an ideology, but rather just by the evidence, and that is clearly not what happened here.
And you would think that, we know that they're against a woman's right to choose, Charisma. So why would they also try to thwart programs that prevent pregnancy at the outset? If you don't get pregnant, you don't have to make that other choice. So,
yeah, and that's kind of, like an open question.
Yeah.
And it really does not make that much sense. We would hope that, as a country, we would want to continue driving down the rates of unwanted teen pregnancies. We know the impact and the effect of what a teen pregnancy has on that teenage woman as it relates to her education prospects down the road and the struggles that they ultimately have to go through. So it would make sense, right, that you would want to support programs that have been effective, that have been based in evidence, in driving down that number.
Right.
But I think what you're seeing here with these political appointees and this administration in general is that they don't believe in science. They're anti-science. They're anti-evidence. They focus more so on a political ideology, and that seems to be what's driving the decision-making process, and that's just not how our American democracy should work, or our government.
866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748. And the timing of this is interesting because Mississippi just the other night passed the the toughest and harshest anti-abortion law in the country. And now I understand a court actually held it up, I think, last night, thankfully. But so there's this war against a woman having the right to choose, and a war against women and grants that would go toward preventing teen pregnancy. And this particular TPP, this teen pregnancy program, right, Charisma, there's evidence-based research that shows it's working. Teen pregnancy is down, right?
No, that's exactly right. And what's interesting too, if one were to look at it from a fiscal point of view, this is also ultimately a waste of taxpayer dollars. Again, these grants were cut mid-cycle. These were 5-year grants. Monies were already expounded for research. In some instances, for example, I'll give you one case in King County in Seattle, and I will note too that in addition to having filed suit against HHS for the information for the decision-making process for cutting these grants, we've also filed suit on behalf of a number of grantees, including King County out in Seattle, as well as Healthy Teen Network down in Maryland, challenging the cuts as being unlawful. And about 9 grantees in total have filed suit across the country nationwide. in that same vein. But to give you the example of King County had a program that was called a FLASH program. And this was a program that included options such as abstinence, use of birth control, the importance of consent before engaging in sexual activity. That is what this program was designed to educate students about. King County was granted about $5 million to conduct the first scientific evaluation of that program. $3 million had already been spent. Now that this administration basically ripped their funding right under the rug and that research has not been completed, absent any court intervention, that's a waste of $3 million. So one can think about it in many ways. And, one as just a pure example of this administration prioritizing politics over the health and well-being of our women and our young girls, but also, too, seemingly not caring or having any concern as to the use of our taxpayer dollars. And so when you cut off research in the middle of that research period, that research is therefore not useful. There's nothing that they can do since they weren't allowed to get it through the end.
866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748, the number to call. Now, in these emails, and these messages, these are employees, some of them saying that they're basically being reprimanded and told to mind their business, right?
Oh, yeah, that was definitely one piece of this that was quite disturbing. So in addition to having what suggests to be political appointees driving this decision by HHS, and as we argue, to unlawfully terminate these teen pregnancy prevention programs, these political appointees and officials also boxed out the career experts within the department who expressed frustration as to the fact and how these grants were being reviewed and the final decision to terminate them. You had Evelyn Kepler, who was a long time, and she still is, serving as director of the Office of Adolescent Health, which is an office within Health and Human Services. She had been serving in that office through many administrations, both Democratic and Republican. Again, as a director of the Office of Adolescent Health, she expressed frustration and frustration of those under her at the way in which this administration was going about reviewing these grants and the ultimate decision to terminate them. And when she did express those frustrations, she was told to, quote, get in line. She was told essentially that, she either needed to get her employees, those who were under her, to get in line, and that it wasn't their place to ask questions about the way in which the agency was ultimately making the determination on how to use its funds, which is shocking because you would think that you would want your career experts, you would want those who are issue area experts to play a role in the determination of how these teen pregnancy prevention funds are being used, how these programs are being evaluated. But instead, again, this administration appears to be driven by an anti-science and, dare I say, an anti-woman ideology, and that is what looks like drove this decision to cut these grants.
Charisma Troiano, half past the hour, she's with Democracy For as we talk about the suit they filed against HHS. So first things first, the suit itself, where does that stand right now?
So we are still currently in litigation. We first filed suit last month. It's going through the court process, and we ultimately hope, and this is the goal of not only our suit, but also suits that were filed by Planned Parenthood and suits that were filed by the Public Citizen Litigation Group to ultimately reinstate the funding to these grantees.
Okay. And in terms of the public listening right now, Charisma, what can they do in this situation? Is there anything they can do? Any mobilization that can be affected?
Yeah, we've seen with this administration that public pressure is extremely helpful. I would suggest, reaching out to your local elected officials, reaching out to your senators, to your congressmen and women, and asking them to demand answers from this administration as to why these grants were cut, what was the justification for them, and pushing to instead reinstate, a cut to programs. Again, this was happening mid-cycle. These are research programs that could have provided some beneficial information. I'll give you another example of Healthy Teen Network down in Baltimore. They had their funding specifically targeted to creating a bilingual app delivering, this information to teenagers and young adults in a way and through a means in which they know, through apps, through technology. But because of this immediate cut to funding, Healthy Teen Network had to cut the Spanish language portion of their app. And, so these are real life, real world impacts that this administration's actions at the agency level are having on the ground. So I would suggest to those listening to, by all means, get on Twitter, use your voice,
Right.
call out and ask for your representatives to demand answers from this administration.
Please, ma'am, please, sir, we want answers to this. Charisma, your website, please.
Democracyforward.org.
Democracyforward.org. Folks, stay informed that way. We're streaming on our social media, and so on Twitter. Twitter, make it plain, folks. I'm going to open a thread and share with you some of the documents they uncovered in the Freedom of Information Act request, so you can see that for yourself. Retweet this story, inform people. This again, this need to control women's bodies, this fixation. We just had a guest on, Charisma, just before you, Elizabeth Gillespie McRae. She wrote the book Mothers of Massive Resistance, White Women and the Politics of White Supremacy. Just to kind of segue and tie the 2 points, she was talking about the role that white women played in keeping segregation alive. And we often look at what men like George Wallace did, but there were women who supported him, women who wanted to keep segregation alive. There were women who attacked Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt from wanting to end segregation as early as the 40s. We now know, obviously, there were women who voted for Donald Trump and Roy Moore.
Exactly.
And so she's talking about a woman, Valerie Huber, who's all in this, trying to prevent young women from any other education that isn't abstinence. They just want to do abstinence only, which I don't get that. I don't get that. What does that do? Who does that?
That is a great question, and it's one,
Is that gonna get you into heaven? Is that the ticket to heaven to say you told everybody to be abstinent? I don't think God's going to ask us, Charisma and Mark, did you tell everybody just to be abstinent and not give them any other tools to prevent pregnancy? I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Right. No. And, it's interesting, too, that, Ms. Huber is taking what seems to be the same ideology that she used in Ohio, that same ideology that was panned by the Case Western study as, containing false information, misrepresenting religious convictions as scientific fact, and now transferring that over to a nationwide policy that, again, I won't be surprised if the same critical problems that existed in Ohio when she ran the abstinence-only education program would not also exist if she tried to do it on a national level.
Abstinence only. You know what? This is what I don't get. Okay, you can be for abstinence. I mean, nobody's advocating everybody just go out and have sex with everybody.
Exactly.
But why can't you have abstinence and everything else too? As a fallback position, contraception, teen education, all of that. I mean, why does it have to be abstinence only? That is so ridiculous and so outdated and backwards. And I can't even say it's outdated because I don't even know if people, 100 years ago were talking about abstinence. I mean, that's just who does that?
Yeah, and again, a lot of these teen pregnancy programs, again, there were 81 grantees across the country. Many of them had abstinence education within, like you said, other portions, including contraceptive, including, just pure education to young teens about sexual health. And again, we also had another woman who was in the administration, Teresa Manning. She was also one of these political officials who these documents suggest was driving that decision. Teresa Manning left the administration in January 2018. We're not 100% sure what led to that resignation, but she too was an anti-contraception advocate. She was a part of the Right to Life Committee not too long before joining the Trump administration. So, not only did we have or we're seeing abstinence only until marriage and nothing else being pushed, we're also seeing that there are political appointees who are anti-contraceptive, anti-birth control as a means of driving down unwanted teen pregnancies.
Wow. Folks, I am, as a matter of fact, right this very minute, I am retweeting the piece from the last word. Notes, emails reveal Trump's appointees war to end federal teen pregnancy program. But then what I'm also going to do is share with you on our stream with Charisma, and we're streaming this right now. Go to twitter.com/make it plain. I'm going to add to that the link to the Freedom of Information Act files that they found, so you can see those for yourselves as well, and see how some of these employees were intimidated and attacked and what have you. So check that out if you would, please, ma'am, please, sir. That's there for you. Charisma, do keep us posted about this, okay? And anything we can do, and then contact your elected officials as well. Tell them you're opposed to this. You're going to cut women's access to abortion. You're going to cut teen pregnancy prevention. So what do they want? They want a bunch of little Roy Moores running around? I mean, that's what it sounds like. They want teenagers to be pregnant, because that's what's going to happen.
The question then becomes, would you provide the services to support them?
And for when they have those children, what's going to happen to them? Exactly. Are you going to provide the services for those children? Exactly. So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. They're exploiting this, 700 Club minority, that handful of them still vote. But it's insane. I'm sorry, Charisma, I probably shouldn't have said that. I said that, she didn't, y'all. Charisma Troiano, thank you, Charisma. Thank you for letting us know about this, and keep up the good work. democracyforward.org, 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 and do keep us posted, okay?
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, take care. Enjoy your day. 866-99